name is Taryll Galloway. I am a registered nurse and powerlifter. Decided to do this Can I Be Vulnerable to provide more awareness for mental health issues going on through black men and just people in general. Being a nurse, you kind of come across a lot of people who have depression or suicide attempts or successful ones. So I decided to make this video. Been through a lot of things that made me realize I have abandonment issues. Actually, maybe a couple of years ago, there became a point where I did want to commit suicide. I even actually made a video to my kids telling them that I love them and, you know, apologizing for committing suicide. And not too many people know that, not even any of my close family members, but that was probably one of the only days I called off of work. I drank a big bottle of E&J, got a whole bunch of pills, had a gun, and wound up just blacking out drunk. Woke up and realized that was the dumbest decision I ever made, and started picking up the pieces to regroup and become a better person mentally and physically after that. So people will automatically assume that just because you're famous or you're a nurse or you're a firefighter, doctor, lawyer, whoever it is, that you don't go through stuff. But you know, let me be kind of the example that, you know, everybody goes through things, and some people don't make it and end up being successful in suicide attempts. And some people actually wake up and decide to do better in their lives and learn about themselves and be honest with themselves and just grow and be an example. I was going through a lot of stress with being a family man, being a nurse, financial stress, and you know, you come from a point where you just don't know your value in life anymore, you know, and yeah, you have kids, you have a good job, but that's just surface stuff, you know. From what I've tried to explain to people, especially coming from a football background and as a young boy to a teenager to a man, is that you don't get to express yourself a lot. You know, it's always don't cry, be tough, be tough.
So you haven't been given permission to express yourself?
No, not at all. And being a football player, your way of expressing yourself is through aggression and violence, you know. And honestly, I believe that where we're failing at, especially with football players in the off season, is that we're not teaching football players or athletes in general, boxers, fighters, whatever, how to shut that off, right, and how to speak about how you feel and how to go to therapy. Right. It's just violence, 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 violence. And then you're on the off season, you're like, you end up getting into bar fights or fighting with your girlfriends or your friends, and then all of a sudden you look at it as a bad guy. Right. So that was definitely a big transition, going from not playing ball to becoming a dad and then trying to provide. And then, you know, I was a young father, right, you know, and a lot of it was ego. It took a lot of understanding myself and being honest with myself. I think after waking up after that, you kind of go through a period of, I wouldn't say, I guess you can call it more depression, but it's more of like an embarrassment. Yeah. You know, like you're like, I let someone or a situation get me to a point where I was going to be absent from my kids forever. Right. Some days I still get kind of mad that I was broken enough to do that, but I mean, that was kind of like my wake-up call. That was my awakening. I'm definitely better now. Yeah. And I have a lot of good people around me, which a lot of the time people don't, they always believe they're the only person going through it. Right. You know, like for me, it was, ain't nobody else going through a divorce. Man, ain't nobody else going through this financially. Ain't nobody going through this. And coming from a broken home, you're like, you know, I don't want that for my family. You know, my dad left early and pretty much throughout high school and college. It was other father figures around me. But it's not my dad, and you're up there looking in the stands like he's gonna pop up,
right.
you know, and that, nope. So, you know, I think that abandonment started there.
Yeah.
But I mean, me and my pops is cool, man. We talk all the time. We're straight, man. He's explained himself and going through heartbreak and hurt. I understand more of why he left. Honestly, he broke down crying, man. He was like, you know, at that time it was him being selfish, you know. And actually, my grandmother was sick, and there was a little bit of, I have to leave because your grandmother's sick, and I'm heartbroken. And then once she passed, you know, it became more of, now my dad's getting old, like his dad's getting old, so it was more of afraid to lose both parents, because he was a Marine, you know. Yeah. So I mean, we grew up just not ever being really around family. So I think being through everything he was, being a Marine versus not being around, you know, family a lot, you know, it was kind of lost time. But then he ended up, the price was losing time with me and my brother. So, but I mean, I understand it now. Because I mean, heartbreak, man, it's a bitch, man, and
this shit sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it can really put a damper, man, on. It can make you do things that you never thought you could do. You know what I'm saying? And
you are not lying about that one.
So I don't hold that against him. I mean, he's done more than enough to show love. And so I'm just enjoying the time we have.
Yeah, best apology is changed behavior.
Yeah, and I mean, he's definitely, I mean, that man calls me like 40 times a day. So, you know, it's just, you know, so I know he regrets it. There's no need for me to throw it in his face. Right. I never realized how common divorce was until you're going through a divorce.
You know what's funny? In a divorce rate is like 60%.
Yeah.
It's like even more than half.
Yeah. You know, and I think once you go through it, it's honestly, it's like my whole life changed overnight. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you wake up one day and your house is emptier, you're splitting time, mm-hmm. And it took shit. There was at one point, man, I don't think I was even eating. It was just waking up to beer bottles after work, right. And I don't think I slept in my room for maybe the first 2 months. I slept on the couch because the TV was on. Right. So like that noise, that background noise made me feel like the kids was running around the house, or there was just something. Yeah. It made me feel like I wasn't alone. Right. So then, you know, I actually had some good friends, man. They invited me over for dinner, make sure I had a home cooked meal. But then it came a point where, you know, you got to start putting yourself back together. Right. And so I'm stubborn. So, and once I started taking the steps forward and putting the pieces back together, I took time to read books, understand myself. You kind of got to look in the mirror and just strip all the bullshit away. Yeah, that's true. And stripping all that shit away, it makes you, it hurts, because you got to, because when you strip yourself away, you got to also understand that it's not just one person's fault. Right. It's your fault too. I mean, I was a bad boyfriend. Right. I cheated a lot. Right. And a lot of that was ego. Right. You know, because, you know, you're out with your boys, you're young, you know what I'm saying? Oh, can't nobody stop me, you know what I'm saying? So, yourself. Yeah, you know. So, I mean, a lot of that was ego, and, you know, you have to understand that. For me, I had to understand that I started the domino effect. Yeah. You know, to my divorce. No matter how, you know, long it was, you know, my actions caused the reaction. Right. It's taught me to be able to fail. And, you know, actually my coach, he's a man of very, very few words, you know, and there's been a few times where I failed an attempt and I'm waiting to get just reamed, you know, because that's what we're used to. Yeah. You know, you miss a tackle, you get laid out, you fumble, you know. Oh, hell no. You get yanked, you know. Yeah. But nah, you know, he's always had encouraging words, and, you know, we just regroup, we come up with a different game plan, we figure out is it a diet or whatever. So, you know, I've learned to be able to fail and be okay with failing
And learning from it.
And learning from it.